Let's travel back in time, 500 years ago, to the city of Strasbourg. Picture it, a sweltering hot summer, and in those cobblestone streets, something really strange is about to happen.
Okay, so take a look at this. At first you might think, hey, it's a party, right? But look a little closer. This is not a festival. Look at their arms. They're just flailing everywhere. Their bodies are convulsing. Their eyes look blank, kind of glassy. Yeah, this is definitely not a celebration. It's something else. It's a compulsion. And they didn't stop. They just kept dancing day and night. It's like they couldn't stop. They weren't eating, they weren't drinking, their feet were swollen, bleeding, but they just kept going. It was this relentless, unstoppable force that had just completely taken over.
And this is where the story gets really dark. People started collapsing, just dropping from pure exhaustion. Some had heart attacks, strokes. They were literally dancing themselves to death.
So what was this? Well, this was the dancing plague of 1518, an actual epidemic of manic, deadly dancing. It just swept through the city of Strasbourg for a whole month, and all it left behind was just confusion and horror.
And at its absolute peak, this mania had infected up to 400 people. Can you imagine 400 people? We're talking men, women, people from all walks of life, hawkers, porters, even priests and nuns. All of them caught up in this totally bizarre and fatal choreography.
And get this, the historical accounts from the time are pretty chilling. Now, they're hard to verify completely, but they claim that at the height of it all, as many as 15 people were dying every single day. The streets were just filled with the sound of music and the sight of death.
So that brings us to the big question, right? The mystery that stumped historians for centuries. What on earth could make hundreds of people just dance themselves to death? Was it some kind of poison, a curse, or something else? Let's dig in and see what we can find out. You know, every epidemic has to start somewhere. There's always a patient zero. And believe it or not, the dancing plague is no different. It all kicked off with just one person, one woman. So how did one person turn into hundreds? Well, take a look at this timeline of how it all escalated. It kicks off on July 14th. This one woman, her name was Frau Trofea, she just steps into the street and starts dancing. And she keeps going for almost a whole week, all by herself. But then things start to change. By the end of July, about 34 other people have joined her. And from there, it just exploded. By August, you're looking at around 400 dancers.
Okay, so with all this chaos spreading, the city officials are completely baffled, but they know they have to do something. So they call in the local doctors, who come up with a diagnosis. And let me tell you, it's a decision that's going to have some pretty disastrous consequences.
So what were these doctors thinking? Well, they actually dismissed any supernatural ideas, like curses. Instead, they decided it was a natural disease caused by something they called hot blood. This was based on this old Greek medical theory of the four humors. And their logic was dangerously simple. If you have a fever, you need to sweat it out, right? So their prescription for a dancing plague was, you're not going to believe this, more dancing. Yeah, they actually built a stage in public, they cleared out these big halls, and they even hired musicians and healthy dancers to keep everyone moving. The idea was that they could just dance the fever away.
This plan, it backfired, big time. I mean horribly. By turning it into this huge public spectacle, they basically just amplified the whole thing. People watching from the sidelines, seeing all this frenzied movement, they got sucked into the mania too, and this psychic contagion just spread like wildfire.
Okay, so the official cure was a total disaster, which leaves us with the question, what was the real cause? Well, modern historians have basically narrowed it down to three main suspects. All right, let's look at our case file here. Suspect number 1, ergot poisoning. This is a type of mold that can grow on damp rye bread, and it can cause spasms and hallucinations. Makes sense, right? But the problem is, it's really unlikely someone who's been poisoned could physically dance for days on end. So, okay. What about suspect number 2? A supernatural curse. People at the time totally believed a saint named Vitus could curse you with a dancing plague. But again, the evidence doesn't quite fit. These dancers didn't seem to want to be dancing. They looked like they were suffering. Which brings us to our last and most interesting suspect, mass hysteria. This is where behavior spreads like a sort of psychic virus. The only catch, for something like this to happen on a huge scale, you need a society under extreme, and I mean extreme, stress. And that right there, That leads us to what is now the most widely accepted explanation. We're talking about an epidemic of the mind. It's sometimes called mass psychogenic illness, basically a psychic plague born out of pure desperation.
Now, to really get this theory, you have to understand what life was like in Strasbourg back in 1518. It was not good. The city was basically on the brink of collapse. There was famine, terrifying new diseases were popping up, and just this crushing poverty. All of that created the perfect storm for mass hysteria. Think of it like a contagious idea, an idea that can actually make groups of people physically sick, and it's all triggered by this massive shared stress.
The historian John Waller has this quote that just nails it. He said, "The minds of the choreomaniacs were drawn inwards, tossed about on the violent seas of their deepest fears." I mean, wow. In that terrified, highly suggestible state, the local belief in a dancing curse, it just became a physical reality for them. It was like they were in a trance, a desperate, unconscious way of acting out all that fear and stress. Eventually, the plague just fizzled out. The last of the dancers were taken to a shrine to pray, and it finally stopped. But the story itself, man, it's such a haunting reminder of the incredible power the mind has over the body. And it really leaves you with a pretty big question for today, doesn't it? In our own age of social media, digital contagions, and all kinds of collective stress, what form